I still remember the smell of sand and gunpowder, the echo of orders being shouted, and the rattle of gunfire that defined my days for months on end. We were stationed in a dusty corner of a place most people back home couldn't find on a map, sweating through our uniforms, living off cold rations, and praying for news from home. Every soldier in my unit clung to their family's letters, emails, and phone calls like oxygen. I was no different. I lived for the moment the base clerk would call my name and hand me a printed message from my wife, Anna. Her words, even on paper, felt like a warm touch across thousands of miles. I read each note repeatedly during quiet nights under a sky full of stars and fire. We had married quickly, 2 years before deployment. She was smart, beautiful, and ambitious, and I thought we were building something solid. Every picture she sent, every affectionate message, reinforced my belief that we had something worth protecting, even across the globe. But then, 3 months before my return, the email came. It was a short message, void of emotion, clinical, almost. She said she couldn't do this anymore, that she'd fallen out of love, and that she had filed for divorce. My breath left my lungs as if I'd been shot. I sat motionless in the communications tent, blinking at the screen, thinking it had to be a mistake. There was no warning, no argument, no sign that something like this was coming. I had survived firefights, air raids, and deadly patrols. But this email, 11 cold sentences, did more damage than any bullet could have. And what's more, she ended the message with, "Please don't contact me. It's done." I stumbled out of the tent, my legs numb, not even noticing the desert wind tearing at my clothes. The next days passed in a daze. I performed my duties like a machine. My unit noticed something was wrong, but no one pried too deep. Everyone had their own wounds. At night, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Anna in my head. Had I missed signs? Was there someone else? How could someone say they loved you, make plans with you, and then sever everything through an email while you were serving in a war zone? My thoughts circled endlessly with no escape. The only escape I had was through official mail, the administrative black and white updates from my lawyer that started arriving a week later. And that's when I discovered the second blow. Anna had emptied our joint account. Every dollar I had saved from deployment, gone. The account was drained right after she sent the email. She had planned this. My stomach churned with a sickness deeper than betrayal. I had entrusted her with our finances while I was away. She was supposed to use the funds for rent, savings, emergencies. Instead, she had transferred every penny into a new account and vanished. I had no access, no backups, and no home to return to. My phone calls went unanswered. Her parents told me she had moved to another state and blocked everyone. I felt humiliated, exposed. I had been fighting for my country while the person I trusted most was calculating an escape plan behind my back. The betrayal burned more than any wound I had received on the battlefield. I wanted answers, but none came. She had erased me from her life, and the silence she left behind screamed louder than any argument ever could. Returning home was never going to be easy, but now it was unbearable. My discharge came with a quiet flight back to the States and a ride to a city that no longer felt like home. My apartment lease had expired. The landlord had rented it out months ago. My belongings were in a storage unit I had never seen, packed by movers I didn't hire. I checked my account one more time, as if hoping there'd been a mistake. Still zero. My lawyer confirmed she had legally moved the funds before the divorce was processed. Since her name was on the account, there wasn't much I could do. I quit, wandered around the streets with a duffel bag and nowhere to go. I reached out to an old army buddy, and he offered me his couch for a while. I accepted, ashamed but grateful. At night, I'd sit by the window in silence, watching cars pass, wondering if anyone else had experienced something like this. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I had survived war zones only to come back and lose everything. My marriage, my money, my home, and my sense of trust. Every email notification made my heart race, only for disappointment to follow. I didn't even know if she was sorry, or if she had moved on without a second thought. But deep inside, a part of me stopped caring about her apology. What I wanted now was to rebuild what she tried to destroy. That meant standing up, taking control, and reclaiming my life from the ashes. I started applying for work, taking part-time jobs wherever I could, from night shifts at warehouses to construction gigs in nearby towns. It was grueling, but it was honest work. Slowly, my bank account started to reflect my effort, not her betrayal. Over the next year, I clawed my way back to stability. I enrolled in night classes using veteran support programs, picked up tech certifications, and spent weekends studying instead of drowning in regret. Therapy sessions at the VA helped me process the trauma, not just from the war, but from the emotional ambush of the divorce. Talking helped. Hearing other veterans' stories reminded me I wasn't alone. We had all lost things, limbs, friends, marriages, but we were still standing. I began volunteering for vet support groups, helping those who had just returned, warning them about the dangers no one talks about, the ones that wait for you at home. During one session, a man broke down saying his wife left him while he was in the hospital after an IED explosion. His pain mirrored mine. I shared my story, and others nodded, their eyes wet. That was the first time I realized my story as tragic as it was, could help others heal. Over time, something strange happened. My pain began transforming into strength. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was becoming someone new, someone resilient, someone unshakable. I eventually found a stable job in cybersecurity, got my own apartment, and filled it with things that were mine alone. No shared account, no shared keys, just mine. The silence in the apartment no longer felt haunting, it felt earned. I didn't need Anna's closure anymore. Her email no longer had power over me. I had built something better, a future without lies. 2 years after that email, I received another message, this time through social media. It was from a mutual acquaintance who mentioned that Anna had gone through some legal trouble. Apparently, the money she had taken from our joint account was used to invest in a failed business with someone. She had started dating after filing for divorce. She was now bankrupt and had moved back in with her parents. The news didn't bring me joy, just a numb kind of curiosity. I didn't reply. I didn't ask for details. I didn't reach out to her. I simply stared at the message and thought, this is not my burden anymore. I had left that chapter behind. My story wasn't about her downfall. It was about my comeback. Still, it struck me how the universe sometimes balances things in ways we don't expect. She had stolen everything, my money, my security, my sense of peace, but she couldn't steal my will to rebuild. And that was something far more powerful. I took that energy and started mentoring young veterans, not just in their careers, but in life. I told them, watch who you trust, keep your finances guarded, and never give one person complete control over your life. Most of all, I told them that even if you lose everything, you can start again, and sometimes what you build from scratch is stronger than anything you had before. Time went on, and I began to feel like myself again, or at least a new version of myself. I wasn't the same man who left for deployment, nor was I the shattered one who came back to find his life dismantled by a 10-line email. I was different, wiser, hardened in some places, softer in others. I'd learned how to trust selectively, love intentionally, and rebuild purposefully. Relationships, of course, were difficult. Trust didn't come easy anymore. Every new conversation was filtered through the lens of what I'd experienced. And though I didn't want to admit it, I carried emotional armor into every date. But eventually, I met someone, not flashy or dramatic, just honest. Her name was Laura, and we met at a local veterans networking event. She wasn't in the military, but her brother was, and she had seen what war could do to people. Our conversations started simple: coffee, books, movies, and over time, they grew deeper. I told her everything. She didn't judge. She listened. And for the first time in years, I felt like someone saw the real me, not the soldier, not the ex-husband, not the guy who got blindsided by betrayal, just me. With Laura, things were calm. There were no games, no disappearing acts, no hidden motives, just quiet mornings, shared laughs, and slow trust. I didn't rush anything. I let time do its work. And in that space, something beautiful happened. I stopped being afraid of love. I realized that one person's betrayal didn't define how lovable or worthy I was. It just meant they weren't meant to stay. What stayed, what truly mattered, was the version of me that came out on the other side. One day, as Laura and I sat on the porch watching the sun go down, she looked at me and said, I don't know what you've been through entirely, but I can see you've come a long way. I nodded. I didn't need to explain everything. My life was no longer about proving anything to anyone, especially not to the woman who left me while I was in the middle of a war. Somewhere along the line, I realized I had forgiven Anna, not because she deserved it, but because I did. Carrying that anger was like dragging a heavy bag through every room of my life. It poisoned my joy and stole energy from moments that deserved it. Letting go wasn't easy. It took years. But forgiveness, I learned, isn't a gift to them. It's a gift to yourself. And when I finally set that bag down, everything changed. I started writing again, journaling, mostly, and eventually turned my story into a blog post. It went viral. Veterans and civilians alike reached out, sharing their own betrayals, their own battles, their own quiet rebuilding. I was overwhelmed, in the best way. My pain had become a bridge to others. What once felt like personal destruction had turned into something universally healing. I got invited to speak at local events, veteran recovery programs, and podcasts. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was someone who had been knocked flat and still found the strength to get up. And that kind of power, no one can steal that from you. Not with an email, not with a bank transfer, not even with silence. What began with betrayal had transformed into something unstoppable. And each time I stood in front of an audience and told my story, I could feel the weight of it lighten, not just for me, but for the person listening who thought they were alone. One day, I received an anonymous email. Just 2 lines. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve what I did. I hope you're okay. No name, no signature, but I knew it was Anna. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I simply archived it and moved on, knowing that my healing didn't require her validation. Looking back, I sometimes marvel at how far I've come. From that day in the tent, eyes fixed on a glowing screen showing me my marriage had ended, to now, standing in a quiet home filled with things I earned, surrounded by people I chose. There's strength in survival, but there's more power in thriving after the worst. I now teach workshops for veterans transitioning back to civilian life, and I always end with the same story: how I lost everything while I was trying to protect something bigger than myself, and how I found, in the wreckage, something far more valuable: clarity. I tell them that betrayal doesn't end your story, it sharpens it. It teaches you who you are when everything is stripped away. It reveals what you'll fight for when there's nothing left. And in my case, I fought for peace. Not revenge, not bitterness, just peace. I married Lara last fall in a quiet ceremony with a few friends and family. No extrabania, just vows spoken with truth. I kept one old photo from my deployment days, not to remember the pain, but to remember the man who began the journey. That man was lost, betrayed, and nearly broken, but he survived. And the man I am today, he's no longer haunted. He's grounded, he's whole. So when people ask me if I ever got revenge on Anna, I just smile and say, no, I got something better. I got my life back. Because in the end, her betrayal was just the start of my real story, and it's one I wouldn't trade for anything. Asterisk.